Hi everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you all for joining today's Auto Lead Star webinar, How to Transform Early Stage Buyers into Tomorrow's Sales. The webinar will be presented by our very own Content Marketing Manager, Devorah Wolf. We're going to take questions at the end, so feel free to submit them on your screen throughout the webinar. And without further ado, here's Devorah.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, How to Transform Early Stage Shoppers into Tomorrow's Sales. So we're going to start today with some numbers that I'm sure you have all been thinking about. Okay, and this has to do with how much people are shopping online. Huge numbers of people shopping online. 88% of people using the internet for research. More than half of the process is done online most of the time. And 75% of the people who come into your dealership visited you first online. So that's a huge amount of research done on the internet, which we all know. And I think we've also been hearing a lot about this number, which is that 40% or almost half of car shoppers today visit only one dealership. And what this all means is that people are not shopping around in person. Where they are shopping around is online. They're doing huge amounts of research online to decide where to go. Okay? And so this is where your shoppers are. They are online and they're figuring out which dealership they will choose. But here's the thing, despite all of these people shopping online, 95% of dealership traffic, dealership website traffic typically does not convert. And that's actually a conservative estimate. So what that means is that 95% of people roughly walk onto your dealership website, click onto your dealership website, and do not stay. So here's a little depiction of what's going on here. All of this marketing and all of these clicks that you've paid for are bringing people in, but they're sort of walking right out. And that's the equivalent of walking into your dealership, not buying anything, not looking at anything, not asking a question. So we really have to ask why this is happening and how we can get to these 95% of people which you've paid for to come to your site, and how we can engage more of them and turn more of those into sales for your dealership. Okay, so part of the problem is that a lot of dealership websites focus on late-stage leads and not early-stage leads. And what do we mean by that? Briefly, a late-stage lead is somebody who is getting ready to buy. They might be ready to buy within the month. They've thought about what they want. They've probably thought about a model that they're interested in. They've probably thought about what dealership they're interested in. And they are very far along in their buying process. They are low down in the funnel. As opposed to an early stage lead who's very far from buying, who's just at the very beginning of their research. So you can think about it like shoppers in a grocery store, right? So you have the guy who walks in with his list, and he knows exactly what he wants, and he's been to this grocery store before, he knows where to find it, and he's going to get in and out of there quick with what he wants. And even if there's like a giant box in front of his favorite ice cream, he's going to know to move that box out of the way. Contrast this with the shopper who comes in without a list. It's their first time in the store, they don't know where anything is, they're distracted by everything. And if there's a giant box in front of the ice cream, they're going to assume there's no ice cream. That's your early stage lead. Okay, and so the early stage lead is going to need more help, whereas the later stage lead does not. And this is, unfortunately, what a lot of websites focus on, those late stage leads, more than the early stage leads. And we know this because this is what we see on a lot of websites. So some examples of how that plays out is that lead capture tools, first of all, can be very demanding. And what that means is that they can ask for a lot of information. They can take a long time. For example, chat tools often take a long time. Qualification forms ask for a lot of information that somebody who's ready to buy will be ready to give. Somebody who's not ready to buy will be less willing to give. Another problem on a lot of websites is that the design can overwhelm. Okay, there can be sort of a lot going on. And just to show you an example of what that might look like, right, you might have like this really nice website, okay, very visually appealing, simple, okay, and then suddenly pop-ups start to pop up all over the place, okay? And that can be, for somebody who's ready to buy, they're going to push through that to find what they want. Somebody who's not ready to buy is not going to be able to find what they want, and they might be overwhelmed and leave when they see that. So a couple of other things that websites often do to show that they're more focused on later stage leads is that they do not have a lot of the kinds of content that an early stage buyer would be looking for that will help them do their research. And also a lot of times websites lack the kind of personalization that they can have. They don't speak to individual shoppers in a customized way, and we'll get to that a little more as we go on. Okay, so again, 95% of shoppers on your site, traffic that you've paid for is leaving, okay? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're early stage leads who are not able to find what they want. And what we really want to emphasize is that early stage shoppers are not some minority group. They are tomorrow's sales, okay? And you want to cultivate that to move them along that process and make them make that sale with you, to make them feel comfortable and trust you to make that sale with you. Okay, so what speaks to these early stage shoppers? What is going to grab them when traditional lead capture and traditional website format does not grab them as effectively? So from this point in the webinar, we're going to talk about some specific strategies for engaging and capturing early stage shoppers. There are going to be two overarching categories, and we'll get into each of them specifically. So the first thing is to create a great experience, an engaging experience that will speak to early stage shoppers. The second aspect is to create opportunities to capture leads at an earlier stage, and that involves creating the type of lead capture that will speak to them. All right, so getting into the nitty-gritty of this, solution number one, an outstanding website experience. So how do you create this website experience that shoppers will connect to and that even early stage buyers who are still at the beginning of their research are going to connect to? So the first thing is accessibility. Accessibility means making the information on your site easy to find. That means having a clear navigation bar. It means having a clean layout. It means making important information prominent. We've seen dealership websites that are beautiful and appealing, but their VDPs, which are probably more important than anything else, are so hard to find that any customer, except for the most motivated one, is going to X out of that to find something that's easier to use. So remember what your customers are looking for and show it to them clearly. The next thing is transparency. Transparency is taking the information that customers want to see and making it available. So this kind of thing is especially important for millennial shoppers or people who behave like millennials technologically. They want to see everything that they need to know on your site. They want to see the price on your site. If you hide that, okay, a lot of people like to hide that to encourage people to make that call or to come in, but for a lot of shoppers, they're not going to do that, especially if they're at the beginning stages of their research. They're just going to find a site that's more straightforward with them. So transparency is also a really important feature to speak to early stage shoppers. The next thing is accuracy. Okay, this is making sure that the information on your website is accurate and it's up to date. You don't want somebody to call you or come into your website, to come into your dealership and find any kind of discrepancy between what they saw online and what's actually available. And this also means making sure that the pictures and the descriptions match, making sure there are no dead links. Make sure you are showing exactly what you have to offer. And the last thing is having valuable content. And we'll talk more about what this means in a minute, but broadly speaking, ask yourself, if I were an early stage shopper just starting to research my next car purchase, what would I be interested in reading about or seeing on a website that's really valuable to me? So some of those content ideas, some of that content that's really important to get on your site is, first of all, visually appealing features such as photos and videos. Put as many photos as you can on. Put photos of your inventory, put photos of your dealership, put up videos that explain your inventory and their features. People love to engage with this kind of thing. And what should go in those photos and videos? Some things that you want to have are, again, your VDPs should be in great detail, should have all the information possible, whatever you can tell people, features, comparisons, whatever you have to tell people, you should put on your website, including comparisons. You can compare two of your own models. You can compare your model with a competitor's model. It's a pretty bold move to put your competition on your site, but it's an opportunity for you to show how yours is the better choice and to explain to shoppers why they should choose you. Something else that's really important are customer testimonials. Shoppers today look for these. They really rely on word of mouth, and word of mouth includes what they read from customers on your site. They want to see people who were in their shoes, who were happy with their purchase, and who can inspire them to sort of move that along. One other thing that's important when we talk about putting content on your site is don't link out to other sites, to third-party sites, even to OEM sites. To the extent that you can, have your content stay within your site, because a link is a leak, and somebody who leaves your site to get a comparison or to get a feature list somewhere else is likely not going to come back, especially if they're at the beginning of their process and they don't really know your dealership brand so well. They don't have that experience, they don't have that loyalty. Okay, so you want to keep your content within your site and not link it out to somewhere else. Okay, and so just to give you an example of the kind of content that we're talking about, here's an example of some features, okay, on a vehicle, on a VDP, and it just allows customers to get a more detailed view of some of the features that they can look forward to. Okay, and notice that this feature explanation does not ask the customer to do anything. It doesn't ask for their information. It doesn't ask for a conversion. It is simply explanatory, and that's going to be helpful for a lot of people. We'll talk in a bit about offers that ask for information, but it's important to have content that does not ask for anything as well. Such as for another example, this video. So you can see how you can put a video on your page that a customer who's interested in can play, right? So that's what it looks like, sort of blown up, right? They want to hear all about the Silverado. They can play that video on their own time, and that'll really help them make their decision about where they'd like to go next. Okay, so the next thing to do to optimize your website is to optimize it for mobile, because 51% of shoppers are using their mobile device to do research. So that means that they really need to be able to navigate your site easily from their phone, from their tablet, to choose your dealership. Because again, a lot of people are only choosing one, and they're making that decision about where to go in the earlier stages of their research, of their buying process. Okay, so having said all of that, those were all ways to engage people on your site without asking them to do anything in return. And now we're going to talk about some techniques that you can use for engaging early stage shoppers that will actually get them to convert more than some of the more traditional lead capture methods. And the first is to offer general offers. So here are some examples of general offers. Okay, so if you look at this offer that can populate your website, it asks for a name, email, phone, and a model. Customers can select from a drop-down, and it even says in the title, window shopping, right? To speak to a customer who doesn't really know exactly what they want just yet, this really speaks to somebody in that stage, and they'll say, oh yeah, I am window shopping. I don't know if I'm ready to finance yet, but I am ready to maybe hear some more information, get specials, as the call to action on this offer is, right? So that's something general that is a good way to speak to somebody who's a little bit earlier in the process. Here's another example, a holiday offer, somebody who doesn't know exactly what they need just yet, but they do know that this is a good time to come into your dealership. because you're offering this holiday sale. So a holiday sale is a great way to speak to a wide variety of people at a wide variety of stages in the buying process, and to hopefully get more of those early stage leads to convert. Okay, the next solution we want to get into a little bit is smart targeting. Because once you put that content on your site, that content that's going to speak to early stage buyers, and that content that's going to try to get early stage buyers to convert, the important thing is to make sure that the right people are seeing these offers at the right time. And here, it's a good idea to employ a technological solution to be able to optimize your website. Use behavioral analytics to group your shoppers. Okay, so that means track their behavior on your site, see what pages they're looking at, how many times they've come to your site, how long they've spent there. And you can use this data to present the right offers to the right people at the right time. So if you have somebody who's looking at the same VDP repeatedly, you might want to show them an offer on that particular vehicle. But for an earlier stage shopper, right, somebody who's maybe come to your site once, maybe twice, that's a good idea to show them something more general. So to really be able to segment your users, see what they're interested in, and show them the right incentives at the right time. Okay, and finally, the last thing we want to present, the last solution for capturing early stage leads is to really provide the right kind of follow-up, to nurture all your leads. So when you do get a conversion from an early stage lead, you want to follow up with them, as you do with all of those leads, but with, let's say, a lighter touch than you would for a later stage lead. Put these leads into a segmented campaign, into an email campaign, for example, that speaks to their interest. You might send them periodic guides for car shopping. You might send them those holiday specials into their inbox. Anything to sort of keep the conversation going, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that helps them make their decision, helps them move their buying process forward. And the idea here is to create an ongoing relationship, because what you're really trying to do is set your dealership up as the place that your shoppers go to get all of their information, to move their buying process along, to get all of the information that they need. And the more that they can do that from your dealership, from your website, the less they have to do that in other places. And so we'll sort of move into summarizing the benefits of engaging and capturing early stage leads, which hopefully we've touched on, but we'll outline them here. First of all, engaging a wider percentage of your traffic, getting to more of that 95% that's typically leaving, is going to get you more customers. Okay, and the reasons for that are, first of all, you will start the conversation earlier. Somebody who comes to you just starting their research but finds that they can actually get all the information they need from your site, you will be able to start that buying conversation with them earlier before they turn to your competitor. What it will also do is it will speed up the buying process. A process that is less frustrating is also usually faster, because when customers can find what they want without having to go somewhere else, without having to do a lot of research all around the internet, they can get it in one place. It makes it smoother, and it also makes it faster. And the other thing is that you will build loyalty to your brand. Establishing yourself as this resource for early stage customers, for people doing their research, builds up your brand. And people talk to their friends a lot. We talked earlier about customer testimonials. So the more you allow this to happen, the more your brand is built up as a resource, the easier it will be for you to get people to find you initially and stay with you throughout. Okay, and the other advantage, obviously, is that your revenue will increase, and this is for a few different reasons. One is that you will reduce your retargeting costs, and so we talked about how all of that traffic that's coming to your site, whether it's converting or not, is traffic that you have paid for. And if you look at this chart, you'll see that, let's say your lead costs $4.70 between making that initial contact, remarketing again, okay, reaching out to people multiple times. By the time they convert on your site, that costs you $4.70, which may not sound like a lot for one lead, but contrast that with what happens with how much money you save if you can actually capture that lead earlier on in the buying process. If you make that initial contact, which leads to a conversion immediately, right? So we've just cut that by a third or more, okay? And that really can add up. Okay, another way that this increases revenue is that it really maximizes that ad spend that you're setting out from the beginning. And in the end, ultimately, this is to make more sales. The more people who are engaging with you, the more people who are finding your brand helpful early on are going to stick with you all through their buying process and close that sale at your dealership. So if we could summarize this approach into sort of one statement, what it really is making your website a one-stop shop for all of your customers. Okay? Everyone who comes to your website should be able to get what they need no matter what stage they're at, and they shouldn't have to go somewhere else for information or resources that are missing. And to the extent that they can do that with you, that sets your dealership up as a great resource to edge out the competition and to get those leads. Okay, so what we really focus on at Auto LeadStar is capturing as many leads as we can for you, maximizing the traffic that you already have on your site, okay? Maximizing the website that you've already built to make it more efficient. We really try to get you that content and populate your website with it, and then optimize so that the right offers go to the right people at the right time. And just to tell you a little bit more about that, if you think about sort of where your shoppers are on a timeline, right, to think about how to bring valuable content to them at each stage of that. And here's just some feedback from one of our customers. Early stage buyers who would normally take hours or days to convert are converting on a relevant offer right then based on their immediate interest. Early lead capture forces them to convert faster so I can start catering to their needs and get them into a new vehicle faster. Okay, so what this really shows is that when it is easier for somebody to convert, when it is appealing for them to convert, that will allow you to start that conversation earlier. And so we'd really like to offer this to you today, just to thank you for joining us today at this webinar. We have a free trial for all of our webinar participants. We'll give you the first month free, and we usually get our clients about a 30% lift in lead capture, in addition to the additional engagement that they have on site, which just leads to further lead capture and further closes. So we want to thank you all for coming, and now we'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Devora. Questions can still be submitted, but we'll get started with a few already. First question is, if I get a lead into my CRM, how do I know that it's an early stage lead?
Okay, so this is a great question. And the way that you know when you see a lead in your CRM is to really look at all the information that's there. Hopefully your CRM, and there are ways to see this information, to see how many pages they've visited, how often they visited your site. So somebody who has only come to your site one time is probably an early stage lead. Somebody who converts on a general offer is going to be an early stage lead. So really analyze that information in your CRM. And if it still isn't clear, then when you reach this person on the phone, that will be the time to really confirm it, and then you'll know how to handle follow-up with that lead.
Great. Next question. What's the difference in the follow-up for an early stage lead versus a late one?
Okay, so this really dovetails off of the last question, which is how do you personalize that follow-up? And so for a later stage lead, you're going to want to call sort of more often and more persistently until you really reach this person, and try to get them into your dealership for a test drive, try to set up really moving the process forward. For an early stage lead, it's useful to set up campaigns where you're going to be sending them information periodically to help them along and let them move at their own pace, but try to speed it up a little.
Great. Next question. How long does it take to set up your website with this kind of content?
So what we do at Auto Leadstar is if you're using this service, it should take about a week to 2 weeks, sort of depending on what you have on your site already and how your processes work, but it doesn't take long. Okay.
Then somebody asked about solution number 3, if you could clarify what that was.
Okay. So solution number 3, I'll just, so we can see it again, we'll head back to solution number 3. Right, which was to optimize for mobile. I think this is what you're referring to. Solution number 3 is to optimize for mobile. That's to work with your website provider, make sure that your website can be viewed, can be navigated with ease on a mobile device, so that nobody sort of gets frustrated with not being able to find what they need and opts to use something else.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. Make sure to take advantage of our exclusive offer we mentioned for the 1-month free trial with Auto Leadstar. And obviously, feel free to reach out with any questions, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day.